message to the billionaire class: you can't have it all.
Hello and welcome to the Evolution of Now. I am your host for today, Michael. And with me I have my beautiful co-host. Hello, Jordan. I'm just going to pick in a random order.
Hey, y'all.
Hello, the beautiful Jordan. We have the amazing Chris Robinson.
Oh, really? Am I
Goodbye,
really
Chris.
amazing?
Ooh. For the sake of the show, I'm going to say yes.
Well, thanks.
Public and private
too.
face.
I hate
Like
you
Hillary
guys, too.
Clinton.
I'm just chilling. And all right.
And we have the Aubrey.
The
Also known
Aubrey,
as Tensei
yes.
Badger.
The Aubrey.
The
Really?
Aubrey.
The
Really?
Aubrey. You can have an adjective if you want.
Wow. Oh.
Don't. I'd rather forget about it.
Every time I hear that, it's just groan.
Yeah.
It was so bad.
So how are we folks doing today?
It's just that great, you know.
I woke up an hour ago, so
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
I'm feeling pretty okay actually. I started meditating, and holy shit, it is the best thing I could have done. It's
actually, yeah, I'd agree with that.
I should start doing that again.
I do some meditation techniques to help with pain management.
Nice.
Sometimes I get pains in everywhere,
Mhm.
and it helps keep that down.
Yeah, and I have anxiety, so I mean, it's definitely effective towards that.
Yeah. Speaking of anxiety, I
Ooh.
found out I've apparently got that today.
Ooh.
We ended up going to the ER, and they were like, well, we don't think there's anything actually physically wrong with you. We think it might be anxiety. So, yay.
Can't imagine
Yep.
why.
Yeah.
But,
well, yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to tell a funny story about so my grandmother died on Monday.
Funny
It's
story.
a great
already.
start to a funny
Yeah,
story.
I know. Let's start with that. So we were at her funeral yesterday, and we're getting ready to go to the leave the funeral home to go to the cemetery. And we're just going along, and it's quite a ways out of town. It's an old cemetery that was started way back before there were actually cities. So it's on like a gravel road, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. So we get out there, and then all of a sudden Dad slows down and he stops and he's like, that was the turn. They missed the turn. They missed the turn to the cemetery. And so we just kind of kept following them, and we're kind of like, I don't know, should we call them? And Dad's like, well, no, they turned on the right road, which was the next road after it. So, the gravel roads are laid out in a 1 by 1 mile, square mile. So he's like, they just turn on the next gravel road up there. So then we get to the next gravel road, and they go straight. Instead of turning.
Nailed
And
it.
we're like, okay. So kept going, and Dad's thinking, he's like, okay, I might have to like actually pass and go up ahead and like actually take the leads to make sure that we actually get to the cemetery. At least they turned at the next one. So we ended up going about 2 miles out of the way to get to the cemetery.
Jeez.
And yeah, my dad's cousin Debbie, they were late leaving the funeral home, so they were hurrying to try to catch up with the procession. And they get to the cemetery, and they're just like, where is everyone? Wait, were we that late? Did we miss everyone? Like everything? So they were just kind of sitting there like, I don't know, what do we do? And then here we come. We finally arrived.
Yeah.
So yeah, my grandmother's older brother, he actually commented that Grandma would have gotten a kick out of it, because Dunleavy's always get lost. Her maiden name was Dunleavy, so yeah, always getting lost.
Yeah.
So that was amusing.
That's
So then,
always fun times.
Talk about some stories, some main headlines for the week. Jordan, do you have one you want to get to?
A story?
Yeah.
Let's see.
I do know you mentioned something about our mayor, or not mayor, but our governor, Phil Murphy, right?
Yeah, the governor of New Jersey.
Yeah.
There were, and there's actually been a lot of things going on in New Jersey. I mean, it's very and it's kind of enlightening to see this 180 from just
Chris Christie.
Switching hands of the governorship. It's really great. So the most recent success he's had in office was signing a bill that would allow Dreamers to receive state financial aid to go to college, which is really awesome, and just another example of his seemingly commitment to what he laid out on his platform, and this just sends a really good message, I think, to other states around the country that that they're just as American as any of us. They grew up here. Their whole lives were spent here. And they also they're not, they shouldn't be penalized, especially in terms of them receiving an education for what their parents did. And I'm sure, there's many of them, their parents have had a valid reason for coming here. And so, it's just unfortunate that, that the conversation in this country in terms of undocumented immigration is so dark, and probably around the whole world. I think we're just having a really tough discourse over immigration in general. During the surge of all these, right-wing politicians that are using it as a tool, to tap into people's, darkest, I guess, instincts, which is, to shun people who are different than them. So. Yeah. But yes, our governor did something very positive, and hopefully, and it seems like New Jersey as a state is going in a positive direction. He said he wants to make New Jersey the California of the East, which is a really interesting statement. But it's a super interesting statement. But
okay.
It's really interesting, but I understand what he's trying to say. He means California is just about the most progressive state in this country, and he wants to make New Jersey within that image, which is kind of cool.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, I get it. So it's also quite interesting how much power the governor has.
Yeah.
Like, you had a new governor, everything just suddenly turns 180. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's not just that. I mean, we've always had a democratically controlled House and Senate, so it's just, we just needed the governor that can actually sign the bills that they're passing through. And it helped. Yeah. And it's working.
You can even say that as like a thing about our politics here in America is like, we give the administrative or the executive branches way too much power, it seems like, because once the new president comes in, suddenly everything changes. Once the new governor comes in, suddenly everything changes. It shouldn't be just one person coming into office and everything being changed like that, right? But like, it seems to be the way that things go here.
Yeah, Americans make me laugh with their elected emperors.
Yeah.
A little bit.
But, Badger, did you want to...
Oh, yeah, I had that story out of North Carolina. This is from the Tribunist. North Carolina passes bill allowing drivers to drive through crowds of illegal protesters blocking roads, which I should remind you, according to the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, pretty much all protests are legal.
They're covered under free speech.
There's no such thing as an illegal protest. There's a riot, but that's a different thing.
Riot is not a protest. But yeah, anyway, a new and highly controversial bill has passed one state's House and is headed to their Senate. The bill aims to cut out the chaos caused when protesters block city streets and highways. If the bill becomes law, drivers will have the right to drive through these protests and through the protesters without fear. It's coming from North Carolina. The state has seen numerous protests in the last few years, and those prompted lawmakers to step in. North Carolina House passed HB 330 with a 67-48 vote.
Yeah. Democracy.
Yep. HB 330 was the idea of Republican Justin Burr. The bill provides that a person driving an automobile while exercising due care is immune for civil liability for any injury to another if the injured person was participating in a demonstration or protest blocking traffic, which, by the way, doesn't actually say illegal protest.
And
it just says any protest
if you
or
smash into
demonstration
a
blocking
person
traffic.
standing on the road, you're not exercising due care.
Yep. Proponents of the bill are celebrating the move, because of course they are. Those opposed point to the abstract explanation of due care. How due care will be determined is a matter for the courts. Yeah.
My read on that is that this is basically just a tactic to scare people out of doing protests in the first place. I think that's really the end game for something like that.
Yes, definitely. It's currently heading to the Senate. It's, as far as I know, unknown as to whether or not the Senate will pass it.
Let's hope not.
Right.
That's all we can do right now.
I mean, I don't have.
Let's not make vehicular homicide a legal thing to do.
Yeah,
please.
I don't have high hopes though, because I believe North Carolina is a conservative state, and of course, all of this is just a response from all of the protesting.
Of course, they're not going to deal with the actual thing they're protesting about. They're just going to try and make protesters legal to kill.
Right.
Yeah, the thing is, North Dakota tried to pass a similar law after all the protests against the pipeline. Mm-hmm. And it nearly passed, but then it failed at the last minute because people were like, wait, what are you trying to do?
Did they wind up protesting?
Not really. I think people just suddenly started calling their representatives because they're like, wait, what's the legal ramifications of this? I mean, yeah, we don't like those people protesting, but could this be used against us?
Yeah. I mean, that's a smart question to ask yourself, because it doesn't just stop at the left. Or what they perceive as the left. It'll affect everyone, because we know that's who this bill is really geared towards, are people who are fighting for progressive causes.
It's targeted Black Lives Matter.
And then once they realized that it could technically apply to them because it was written so poorly, they were just no matter what they were protesting, they were like, yeah, no, I don't think you should pass this bill, and it kind of died.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's good at least.
Yeah. But my point is, this is not the first time this has actually happened, come up.
Yeah, for sure. It happens way too much in this country.
Yeah, making protests essentially illegal to murder protesters. What could possibly go wrong? Chris, so do you want to talk about that?
There's a looming topic here to talk about this week. I don't know if you guys can hear this, though. The thunder outside right now has been insane this whole time, so I hope I'm not going to lose power. But, okay, at least it's not picking it up, but it's been loud out there this entire time. I'm worried that my power is going to go out, but hopefully not. Almost. It's almost there. Going to get thunderstruck soon, probably, if I stay on for too long. But, there is a new viral music video that came out this week, I believe, by a man, or I guess his pseudonym when he raps is Childish Gambino. His name is Donald Glover. And he put out a new music video this week. It's called This Is America. And I found it really, really important to talk about this because this thing has been lighting up the internet all week so far. It's been insane. I am actually calling it sort of like a masterpiece, actually, because I think it's a piece of artistic masterpiece, and there's just so much in it. You can watch it like 10 times and you won't catch everything still. You'll still keep getting more out of it every time you watch it again. And I don't know if I want to spoil the entire thing. I think everyone out there needs to go watch this video now before we really get into it. But I don't know if you guys wanted to talk about some of the symbolism in it and everything, because this thing is chock full of it. It's
if you
all
want to spend
over.
a little bit of time, talking about it. Sure.
Yeah. So right off the bat in the video, Childish Gambino, Donald Glover is dancing And then there's like really nice upbeat like choir-ish music in the background. And then he pulls out a gun and randomly shoots someone in the back of the head. And then the song completely changes. And he starts saying, "This is America." And the whole focus changes.
I wouldn't say that it was choirish music at the start. It was more like kind of like a low-key, kind of good vibe type feeling, kind of very
Caribbean.
Yeah, that's
Caribbean. Yes, that's the word I was looking for. So yeah. The choir part comes later.
Yeah, I'll accept that.
It's got like everything's kind of chill and it's all right. When they said, "Oh no, wait, no, this is America," bang.
Yeah.
You can't just chill. This is America.
Yeah.
It's gonna fuck.
Yeah,
and what I thought was interesting was actually his facial expressions and like how, because he was like kind of moving the whole time, so he did like kind of a bunch of facial expressions that he kind of started out, he's feeling it, it's good, and then he's kind of angry and he starts kind of looking like more like kind of like a bit of almost like a macho pose, and then he kind of dances around behind the chair, pulls out the gun, and shoots him
in the back of the head.
Yeah.
It's really, really interesting. The takeaway that I have of the entire video is like the what I read from it is like he's trying to show that America has so much under the surface going on that's really messed up, because throughout the video there's crazy stuff going on in the background. There's like riot scenes and like all kinds of like these beat up cars and like weird crazy stuff going on in the background of it. And the focus seems to always be on him dancing and the dancers around him dancing while hell is breaking loose in the background almost. And it sort of like encapsulates everything in our culture right now, even our news. We focus on certain things for a short period of time, and then all of a sudden we're back to just like, I don't know, sort of like sticking our heads in the sand again and forgetting about like what just happened. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of that in the video, I think.
I think kind of the thing that I found is the most chilling was that like every time he like actually like shot someone in the video, he kind of would just kind of give this little shrug and go, "This is America."
Yeah, it's all psychopathic in the way it just sort of carries on.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I know you want to talk about this, Jordan.
America kind of is.
No, it's true. It definitely, like, once Childish Gambino personifies the country, you actually see a person doing these things that, as a representation of the country, it does come off as psychopathic, and it makes you think, like you said, oh shit, America may just be psychopathic.
Just maybe.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely A+. I think it's what's the beauty of it is that it doesn't try to present ideas on how it can make it better. It just pretty much just lays out the problem in the most guerrilla way possible. Like, it was very raw and just putting some very like weaving in very fantastical elements or mystical elements, or like the what is it, the horsemen of the apocalypse, kind of just ushering in all of this chaos, and or the police responding to the chaos, and there was just so many symbols that kind of beckons you to watch it as many times as you need to. And it's very important that, it's really cool how he used the most in form of music right now, which is trap, in order to make a very poignant statement, or just a poignant observation, because it really wasn't even a statement. It's just an observation. And
I guess the statement would be, "This is America." That's the statement.
I suppose. Yeah, but it was.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I did think it very interesting because I did notice there was a very definite change in theme. So there's like the opening theme, and in the background you have a lot of, like gang activity and crimes and stuff going on in the background, stuff like that. People are kind of running around going wild. There's no police cars anywhere. No police presence at all. And then after he uses the rifle, whatever it is, and shoots a bunch of people, that's when you first see a police car. You don't see a police car or any form of police until then. And that also marked a shift in the discussion too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's the beauty of it is that it's all interpretive. Like it pretty much just it tells you more about yourself than it necessarily does about the artist or the work itself, because it forces you to reflect on your beliefs on what's really the problem. Some people thought that the video was a reflection on black crime. Some people thought it was there were some other theories as well. But yeah, I mean, so it really does have a lot to say about the listener or the viewer than necessarily does about the art itself, which is really interesting.
It's interesting that
different
people get different things out of it.
Yeah.
And this is why I find it to be a masterpiece. You can interpret it in so many different ways, and that's, I think, in a lot of ways what makes like a great artist at times, where like you can have so many different perspectives on one piece of art. It's interesting how much there is, and you can see some aspects of the black on black crime in it, especially at the beginning where he shoots the guy, and then like you were saying, Aubrey, there's no police presence. And then later on, when it's actually a mass shooting, now all of a sudden there's police being involved, and there's
That's very interesting.
It's a really good read. I didn't get that until you brought that up, Aubrey. I did not notice that little bit, and
it was just and it wasn't even necessarily like I didn't even notice it like the first 3 times I watched the music video. But then I was kind of like, what? I wonder what the police are doing in the background of all this. Like, what are they actually doing? And to be honest, I didn't actually see the police really doing anything other than just kind of standing there. Like, I mean, you see their police cars flashing lights. They're kind of standing there, like taking cover, but they're not really like advancing or going anywhere near any black people who are like running around and stuff. And
they're sort of like there, but passively.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was when I noticed that, there's none there until after the mass shooting.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I got the message that, it's basically like they definitely, like the artist had the feeling like the police are not there to protect them. The police are not there for them, except to like, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And of course there are other.
And I know there's a lot of black people that actually feel that way too. So.
Yeah, for sure. And I think and then of course it broadens the intent when you see like the people handling or caring for the guns so much more I guess considerately. I'm not even sure that's the word. Considerable than they did the actual dead bodies.
Yeah.
They just drag the bodies off.
Yeah, to give context, every time the gun is involved, when he shoots someone, he hands it off really delicately, very gently to another person that has a red cloth in their hand, and they nice and gently put the cloth over the gun and run off screen. And it's sort of like, it seems like they're caring for these guns much more than they're caring about what just happened with that gun. Like they don't care about the 10 people, the 10 choir members that were gunned down as much as they're actually caring about the gun that did that mass shooting. And in a lot of ways, you can see that with our culture these days with the right wing on everything, You know, the only thing that seems to matter to them is, you can't touch my guns. I have a right to my gun. I don't care if 1 million people have to die. I want the freedom to have my gun. And like, we never stop to think about what's happening with these guns, like what happened because of these guns, you know, like, and this is, I think what the left is always trying to say is, look what is happening with these guns, and the right is never listening to that.
Oh no.
I think like this era marks a shift in how the rest of the world sees America. In a sense, I think with Trump at the helm and he's being so adverse against like the way or
fake news.
The media, of course, but even our allies, how he's being very combative and adverse against the collective plan, the Paris Agreement, and the Iran nuclear deal, and some others as well. He seems to be, going against the grain and not necessarily in a good way. That's kind of making our allies, I'm sure, making them second guess America's role on the world stage. So.
Oh yeah, they're definitely second guessing that.
For sure.
With pulling out of the Iran deal, that's like all I've been hearing from foreign sources.
Totally. And I'm sure like videos like this which is not only going viral in America, it's going viral around the world, isn't helping the image that America wants to present. And so,
Yeah, maybe you can also interpret like he's dancing and singing, and maybe that's what America's trying to present to the rest of the world. But behind that is all of this chaos, all of this violence, all of this brutality that's happening right underneath the surface. And maybe in some ways it's sort of like you can interpret it as like America is trying to distract the rest of the world with all this singing and dancing, when the rest of the world's like, yeah, no, we can see the chaos that's behind you, buddy. We see it. Your song and dance isn't working, man. Maybe that's another interpretation you can have of it, Yep,
absolutely. But yes, Childish Gambino, don't stop. And hopefully this inspires other artists to be a little bit more socially, to implement more socially conscious content within their pieces. And of course, not to be heavy-handed, because I think what made this so successful is that it wasn't heavy-handed. It wasn't preachy, but it didn't.
Yeah, it was. It's been so much up to people's own interpretations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are some parts of the song where he is absolutely prodding other rappers. Like, there's one part where he's definitely prodding the popular song Gucci Gang, where he's saying contraband, contraband, contraband in the same type of way that, what is it, Little Pump or whatever his name is, says Gucci Gang, and I see that as like, he's trying to say, you see this, you other, like, maybe he's like saying like to other rappers, like, look at this, you're just sitting here, rapping about like nonsense when all of this other stuff is going on behind you. You have to be able to acknowledge these things are happening, that this is real,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, so it's very interpretive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We can go on this for an entire episode, I think, and maybe we should have probably actually done that. but yeah.
No, but what we're discussing tonight is definitely
related. So
yes, for sure. So
to move on to the main topic, what I want to talk about tonight is policing, both in America, the UK, problems with what we think policing should be, etc., etc. We'll get there. So, what I wanted to start with, just to dive straight into this topic. Let's start with, what do we think police should do? Because we live in different countries and different parts of a different country. So what do we actually think police are for? New Jersey?
New Jersey. Well, I mean, for us, I would say like it's obvious, protect and serve, right? Isn't that supposed to mean something at this point? Like the police are supposed to uphold the law for the citizens in the area. And protect people. And it's, that whole mantra of theirs to protect and serve used to mean something, and at this point it feels more and more hollow over time. And I would like that the cops could actually, do that a little bit more, protecting the communities that they're serving more.
Protecting everyone in the community, not just the white people.
Yeah, and it just feels in some places that the police become a sort of occupying force. And then, I'm sure like in Camden, here in New Jersey, it's a very violent and brutal place from what I know. Like they've had one of the highest crime rates in the country. People there probably don't see the cops as saviors, though. They probably look at the cops as if they're this occupying force coming in there and, lording over them. And part of that is that these the cops are not actually of the communities that they're serving. They drive into work. They come from the suburbs, and then they police the streets of the urban areas. And so they have no real connection to the people there. And so they're more easily able to treat them as if they weren't human, as if they were some kind of enemy that they had to subdue.
Yeah. Something I noted this just a couple of days ago. There was some black family went to a park and had a barbecue. In the barbecue area, everything was fine. But some white woman, for some reason, called the police on them. And what stuck out to me was the a happy ending to the story. I'll get to that in a second. But what stuck out to me was the article said that you shouldn't call the police for frivolous things like this. And my first thought, it's a waste of time. The police are valuable time. We pay for their time, so you shouldn't really call the police for this. It didn't say that. It didn't say it's wasting time. It said because someone might get shot. And I think that really speaks to the present state of policing in America, where you shouldn't call the police because the risk someone's going to get shot.
Yeah.
In general, I think the police are for keeping people safe, whatever that means. So that can mean just directing traffic to make sure traffic accidents don't happen. That can mean arresting people who would try to hurt you. Therefore, keeping people safe.
Yeah.
The happy ending to that story, by the way, the whole town came out and had a massive cookout at the park. The black community had a big, massive cookout.
Nice.
Try to arrest us all then.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's coming, from I live in South Jersey, and it's a little bit
Ew, South.
I know, but
spoken like a
Jersey,
northerner.
Damn southerner Jersey people. Yeah.
I meant okay.
I guess that would be.
But I just wanted to say, as somebody who lives in New Jersey, it is not at all representative, or in South Jersey, it's not at all representative of the interactions that others have with the police throughout our country. Because at me, as a black man, yes, I'm perceived as, okay, there's a whole gender thing that I never really addressed on the show before.
Yeah,
but for the sake of, I'm of course I'm black, but a black man. My run-in with the police have been very, it's been very run-of-the-mill. Nothing necessarily stands out. All have been successes in terms of me getting out there unscathed.
That's good.
Yeah, right. I'm still here.
Yeah.
I know there's a difference in where you are that affects it, and things like what you're wearing and what car you're driving, things like this can also affect how it goes.
Yeah, there's so many factors, but but that still doesn't. My successes doesn't negate the fact that there is a big problem with the way cops or police address certain people within our own community, in certain communities, and and just looking at some figures here, there's in 2017 there were 987 times that police shot and killed someone. and that pales in comparison to the amount of police deaths, within that same year, which I'm trying to find it here. I can't necessarily find it right now.
Yeah, from what I know, at least, cops are pretty safe when it comes to like their job nowadays. There's actually less cop deaths than there have been in a very long time. You know, their mortality rates have gone down.
They have, and I have it right here. Actually, there's only been one. So yeah, that was my figure for 2000. These are my figures for 2017, of course, and in 2017. Only 129 law enforcement officers were killed in the line of duty, and of course that's only, that's close to only like 10% of the overall people that they kill every year. And of course, it doesn't get into the details about why and if they were unarmed, but the fact of the matter is these are gun deaths, and that is a huge problem within our country.
Well, before we go on, I want to mention that a lot of people in the UK listen to this will be really spooked, like, oh my God, how do Americans can do this? It's worth remembering, in the UK, we arrest minorities more disproportionately than the Americans do. Our police are actually more racist in their arrest record than Americans are. We just don't have guns.
Where did we learn it from, would you think,
Yeah. The UN actually... issued a report that said that the UK police are structurally racist.
Damn. I guess because it's not as fatal as it is in the US.
Yeah, so it don't get the attention because no one dies.
To us, it doesn't seem as racist because we're like, oh, yeah, well, we're killing our blackies.
I mean, I guess a good thing is not every cop in... I know, that's to say, but yeah. I just wanted to step into those shoes. Yeah. I just wanted to say, though, not every cop in the UK is armed either, right? There's a very select few that have a gun or something, so that might be one reason why there's a lot less police homicides like that, There's just not the guns available to do it.
Yeah, our police aren't armed, so there's no random shootings because the cops don't have guns. And it's worth noting the people don't have guns either, so the police don't need to be on edge. There was a show someone did where they took someone from the US and attached them to a police unit in the UK for a day. And what struck them was in the UK, in the US, of course, when police stop the car, it's like, okay, keep your hands on the wheel where I can see them and all this. In the UK, what they do is turn off the engine. They're saying, so the first thing you're doing is having them put their hands where you can't see them under the engine to turn under the steering column to turn off the engine, because they're not worried, because the odds of them having a gun in the car are so slim, and because it's a bit more relaxed, everything's sort of a bit more chilled.
And I would even say it's probably very similar to our rates of people actually doing anything to a cop when they pull them over here in America as over there. It's just the cop's perspective these days in America is that everyone is a potential murderer that's going to kill me. And so they can't take any chances.
Remember, we do also have more guns. So, I mean...
That too,
yeah, they might have similar rates of violence against cops over there, except the thing is, they're not worried that they're going to die,
The running theme with violent crime in the US and UK is that the actual rates tend to be about similar for similar areas. London and New York, for example, have very similar rates of violent crime. The thing is, in New York, you're some 50 times more likely to die from violent crime in the UK, because violent crime in the UK means getting punched, whereas in the US it means getting shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I thought it was interesting, the mini doc that Aubrey posted about Nordic, how Nordic, how Nordic countries police departments run and how they're perceived in public, and it was Sweden, is Norway, Finland, and it was interesting, even the smallest of details. So how they would label what we would call suspects. They call them clients.
Or customers, it was, yeah.
Or customers, right? Because essentially, yeah. And it kind of, essentially, it kind of makes sense in a way because the police are there to serve them. So they are kind of, in a sense.
The main
and of course,
thing is that really pushes an atmosphere of respect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is something I know in America where the police, when Americans are talking to the police, so it's okay, sir, and you got so deference for some reason. Like, I never understood that.
Yeah.
But
and
Americans in general tend to show more deference to authority figures, ironically.
Yeah. And one thing that I've noticed as well, it's like when people like look at like some of these videos, they'll be like, well, he wasn't respecting the cop enough, probably is why he got shot or something like that. It's like, what?
Yeah, it's like, I don't care.
Well, it's escalated because he wasn't proper and nice enough to the cop, or he wasn't respectful enough to the cop, so he had this coming kind of attitude to people.
To diffuse the situation. It's on the cop.
It's almost as if the
cop
police
has
are
the
supposed
power
to be
in
there
that
to
situation.
to de-escalate things,
That's why we pay them. But, it's just interesting that the perspective can be that for some people, that they're like, well, he wasn't respectful enough for the cop, probably that's why things escalated the way that they did. That shouldn't be a factor in why it escalated the way it did.
Yeah. When I was thinking about this topic, I was thinking, what makes a good police officer? And I decided a decent metric of it was when the police arrive somewhere, things are supposed to get better from that point. They're not supposed to get worse. That means things are supposed to start calming down, de-escalating, and get safer. Mm-hmm. It's a really bad state of affairs when police show up and everything gets more charged.
Yeah.
And even the media can pick up on it. Like that article you were talking about, they even picked up on it too. Like, yeah, don't call the cops because that can actually escalate to someone dying, basically, is what they were saying with that. Like, that's insane. That is insane. I don't know what else to say on that. It's
when
just
you have a situation
crazy.
when the police being there leads to a worse outcome than the police not being there, that's when you have a problem.
Yep.
Touching on that, there's something I ran into about, in theory, UK policing is supposed to be based on. You could argue it's not, and I certainly would argue it's not anymore, but and it's this idea of policing by consent. It's something I really think the Americans could pick up on. The basic idea is that police aren't a military force. They don't repress crime. And you don't deter crime by simply, like death penalty and being really severe in punishment. The police are there to prevent crime as a police force. And that requires the consent of the people they're policing. And I'll link it in the... Well, Chris will link it in the description, but it's this idea that you need the consent of the people you're policing in order to police them. And that requires minimal use of force, effective policing, not just... it makes a distinction between visible policing and effective policing, and it says that the mark of effective policing is that there is no crime, not that you can see the police doing things.
Yeah.
So there's often a focus on being able to see the police, even if they're not really doing anything. Whereas it seems to suggest that actually you want the police to be invisible. If you're thinking about the police, it's because either crimes are happening or you can see the police, and that's not really ideal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well said.
Go on, Badger.
Oh, I was just going to say, here in Iowa, of course, things are a lot more spread out than they are in New Jersey or in England. We just drove about 20 minutes to get from the funeral home to the cemetery where we buried my grandma. So for a little bit of perspective. And that was considered nearby. I mean, I remember when we first, when my parents moved into the house they live in right now, and one of the movers fell off the van, and he broke his leg. We called the ambulance. It arrived 15 minutes later. And we actually live fairly close to the fire department, too. They do. But they live still out in the country. And it's a rural fire department. So I don't even know if they actually have an ambulance at that fire department. It might have come from the interstate. So, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where there's a lot of Iowans who live in places where if you call the police or if you call for an ambulance, you can be waiting a half hour before anyone gets there.
Yeah.
And that's normal response time.
It's something different within the UK and US, actually. I was going to touch on this. Where in the US, I remember when Sandy Hook happened, it was 40 minutes before the police got there and were able to, go into the building and do the thing. Mm-hmm. In the UK, in Manchester, in 2014, I looked up a Freedom of Information request. I'll have to find it again. The average response time for the police, from getting a call to being ready to go do the thing, was 4 minutes. So, yeah, I think this is something that relates to gun control as well, because in America, a lot of Americans say, well, how are you going to protect yourself? What happens if someone breaks into your house? And odds are, the police can get to your house before you can.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, because 4 minutes is almost nothing. I think this is something a lot of Americans miss about UK gun control.
Yeah.
If there's less gun crime, then the police that deal with gun crime are less stressed.
Yeah. And I think that's something that a lot of people who live in cities don't understand about people in the rural communities who want to keep their guns. Because for them, it is a matter of protecting their family.
Yeah, because if the police are half an hour away and someone does break in, then you're fucked.
Yeah, I mean, like, my grandparents, where they live, they're 20 minutes from Newton city limits. They live on a farm. That's from the city limits, mind you. It's probably another good 15, 20 minutes driving in town. So they'd probably be looking at either state patrol would basically like highway patrol or the sheriff would respond if they were in the area. And that's a big if. Or Newton, they'd be waiting probably about somewhere between 40 to 50 minutes for Newton police to get there. Now, mind you, my grandparents were very anti-gun. So they did not believe in even owning a gun. I'm not sure if it was a religious issue for them or not, but knowing them, it probably was. But I mean, it's kind of like, so you can take it a bit with a grain of salt, but it does help you kind of understand that stuff. Plus, there is also sort of this attitude of we all know our neighbors and we all look after each other. Like, so I mean, we kind of, when Dad was driving us down the back roads to get to Newton for the funeral, he started pointing out farmhouses, probably a good 3 or 4, 5 miles away from where my grandparents lived, and he knew exactly who lived there.
Yeah.
So they do have a community and they do talk to each other. They know who each other are. So chances are, if there was an emergency, my grandparents might not call the police. They might call one of their neighbors.
It's interesting.
Mm. Yeah, and that kind of rolls in, harkens back to what were they called? Community watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a very early version of what a police force kind of is today, where it was more based on it was very voluntary and just based on the people within a community. And actually, about that, do you mind if I have a little history? Yeah, thanks. And it's about the development. It's a passage. It's not very long, but it's just about the development of the police force within America. And it comes from an article by the New York Times, and it says that the first publicly funded organized police force with officers on duty full time is created in Boston in 1838. So that's a pretty early invention. Boston was a large shipping commercial center, and business had been hiring people to protect their property and safeguard the transport of goods from the port of Boston to other places. And then it goes on to say, within the South, however, economics that drove the creation of police forces were centered not on the protection of shipping interests, but on the preservation of the slavery system. Some of the primary policing institutions there were, let me go back on that one. Some of the primary policing institutions there were the slave patrols tasked with chasing down runaway and preventing slave revolts. The first formal slave patrol had been created in the Carolina colonies in 1704. And during the Civil War, the military became the primary form of law enforcement in the South. But during Reconstruction, many local sheriffs functioned in a way analogous to the earlier slave patrols, enforcing segregation and disenfranchisement of freed slaves. And just to kind of jump more to the late 19th century, which at that point, all major U.S. cities had police forces. But the reasoning was very interesting, and that was because of fears of labor union organizers and of large waves of Catholic, Irish, Italian, German, and Eastern European immigrants. So, yeah.
Ooh, look at my ancestors messing things up.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I think I have heard that there is still even a difference between like southern policing and more northern-ish policing. It's sort of like they had like a posse system sort of down in the South. And
that's what the Second Amendment was referring to when it talked about a well-regulated militia. It was referring to militias that would patrol slave patrols. They would patrol around, make sure the slaves were all where they were supposed to be, that they weren't plotting a rebellion. If there was a rebellion, put it down quickly before they really had time to, dig in or amass weapons, that kind of thing. And stuff like that. And
protecting the frontier from the Indians as well. That was another part of it, yeah.
In fact, actually, I think one of my ancestors served on one of those.
Yeah.
To my shame.
Yeah. Damn. And it's kind of chilling to, when you go over the initial cause of that part of the Constitution in general, is because it's chilling because people will cite that today as a reason for why they need to keep their guns and why they're unable to relinquish them. And it's like, yeah, do you even know the context of why that was even created in the first place?
Ignore that part with the.
Yeah, it's always.
I mean, when you think about it, a well-regulated militia being necessary for
the security of the free state.
The security of the free state.
Come on, I know this. I'm not even American.
Whatever. The right to bear arms shall not be infringed. See, and that's why it's put in the context of a well-regulated militia preserving a free state.
Well, it's kind of poorly worded anyway. I mean, this is off topic.
Yeah, it is.
Like, well-regulated, what is well-regulated, and what does this have to do with the right to bear arms? Because it just sort of cuts off, and it's very odd.
Yeah. Well, and I bet that was part of a compromise because we did have abolitionists amongst the founding fathers. So
yeah, and there's the question of why exactly we're making our laws by scrying the words of several 100-year-old dead men anyway. So I always wondered that.
Yeah, I think it's a cult personally.
Look, I think when Ronald Reagan when Trump says "Make America Great Again," he's referring to somewhere around that period when power was consolidated within the hands of only a very, very few. Which, I mean, it still is, but at that time, there's almost no chance for women and people of color to to wrestle any power for themselves. And yeah, I think that
that's not cool. You were lucky if you weren't a slave.
Yeah, right.
I mean, well, with regards to Trump's "Make America Great Again," we've talked about it recently on the show, I think, where he actually stole that line literally straight from Ronald Reagan's campaigning. He said "Make America Great Again" too. Ronald Reagan said that during his presidential campaigning, and he took it from him, and Ronald Reagan was very much sending dog whistles. Like the first place he started his presidential run was like apparently I can't remember where it was, but it was supposed to be like really like actually significant in where he chose to announce his campaign. Do you guys remember where it was? I can't remember now off the top.
Not sure.
Yeah, no.
Oh.
Yeah, but it was a town that was supposedly like really important, and like it sort of was like a nod to the white supremacists and the white nationalists at the time, and saying, yeah, I'm with you guys, basically to them. But I mean, that's not new, unfortunately. And yeah, I guess he was probably also hearkening back to a time where I guess at that time that was the 80s, right? So the hippie movement, the women's rights movement, and the black rights movements had been going on for a while then, and they were sort of like a backlash. Ronald Reagan was taking a backlash to those movements with his "Make America Great Again," I think, rhetoric.
Make America Great. I think Trump just added the again on.
No, he said it as well. He said "Make America Great Again." Yeah, yeah.
Christ.
I can. I'll have to probably pull like a clip of it, but yeah, he even says it, I believe, in some of his speeches.
Well, to get back on topic, Badgie, you mentioned you wanted to talk about something with jurisdiction to do with Native American reservations.
Oh yeah. So this is actually a very long and complicated topic. In fact, one that I believe there's even an entire college course on it. So basically, around the turn of the 20th century, 1900 or so.
All right.
Possibly.
Maybe.
Okay, I think that's what they call it. Anyway, so around 1900.
The turn of the century, yeah. All right, so my power just went out, and yeah, we're just going to start from here. So basically, we were about to mention the Native American situation with regards to policing, right?
Mm-hmm. So I've been told to wrap it up and make it quick, which allotment itself is an extremely complicated topic, and I think I might have said earlier that, there's entire college courses on the topic. Yeah. So, I mean, it's obviously not something you can wrap up terribly quickly. But basically, when you look at a map and you see, like, this big, huge box area and it says Native American Reservation, that is a lie. That is not what the reservation looks like. The reservation is actually a whole bunch of tiny little squares. Some are connected, some are not. And basically, enforcement is a giant fucking mess when it comes to reservation. Because on the reservations, state police do not have any authority. They cannot make any arrests. They don't have any jurisdiction whatsoever. Your county sheriff, nothing.
Like, isn't a reservation sort of supposed to be like a sovereign nation on its own, sort of, right? Isn't that sort of like the idea of it? Or am I wrong? In theory,
in practice, that is completely different.
Okay.
In practice, all of that land is held in trust by the United States government. They cannot actually do anything on the reservation with not only the permission of the federal government, but also they have to get approval from everybody whose name is attached to that piece of land.
Huh.
And that goes into allotment and a lot of the problems with allotment that we frankly don't have time to get into. And yeah, like I said, entire college courses.
Yeah. We could probably have a show on that at some point in the future.
Yes.
That's a good idea.
Yes. That would probably be a good idea. But basically, anyway, so on the reservation land, it's the federal agents that have authority. And most of the time, they got better shit to do elsewhere, like the FBI. They don't have time to come investigate every forged check that's written on a reservation out in the middle of nowhere. They got better things to do with their time. So as a result, a lot of those crimes go unprosecuted. And most of the time, they don't even bother even reporting them because they know nothing's going to be done. If the reservation itself, if the tribe itself has enough resources to actually form their own police department, and they actually have the ability to actually form like their own system and justice system, which this is extremely rare. Because again, you have to get permission from the federal government to even do this. because you have to build the resources and stuff. And to build anything on any reservation land, you have to get permission from the federal government. So as a result, policing's a nightmare. And that's also part of the reason why rape statistics and sexual violence against women on Native reservations is so incredibly high. I believe it's almost, what was the figure I saw? 50% of Native women have been raped or have experienced sexual violence at some point in their lives. Yeah,
that's from what I remember seeing was that.
And I think that's a conservative number, too. I think that's a lowball number.
Yeah. And I think it was also 80% of Native American women also said that they experienced even just some level of violence as well. Not just sexual violence, but
violence
when you go to specifically sexual violence, it's 50% or more.
Yes. And a lot of this is also tied to the pipelines. Because a lot of these women who experience sexual violence and rape, it's not actually from their partners or from even another Native American. Usually it's from someone who is non-Native. And a lot of times, a lot of these pipelines go right by reservations or through reservation land. So, if these guys have been at a lot of pipeline projects, they know that they can probably rape a Native American woman and they'll probably get away with it because of the jurisdiction nightmares. Yeah,
pipeline workers are possibly doing some of that. Yeah, it sounds like from what I was reading of that article you posted. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a major problem, and frankly, our whole reservation system's just massively fixed because
it's going to be a tough situation. I think. Yeah.
It's ridiculous that we're holding their lands in trust. We shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, they are sovereign nations. We made treaties with them. You only make treaties with sovereign nations. You don't make them with, like states. So, I mean, like the United States does not make a treaty with Iowa or New Jersey. They make treaties with other nations. So as sovereign nations, they should have the right to self-determination, to develop as they wish, and to be able to police themselves.
And in some ways, it's almost like a similar situation like Gaza is with Israel. They're supposed to be their own cities or nation, but they're not. They're just really sort of like controlled by Israel in Gaza's situation, where over here it's these Native American lands in these reservations, right?
Yeah, I mean, like the more populous ones, like Cherokee, and I think Lakota also. They have like even their own passports and stuff like that. But like a lot of the smaller nations, they just don't have the resource. A lot of them don't even have their own lands.
Yeah,
they're on someone else's lands.
And then other entities can just come in and just take it. Like the situation also, with Sacred Stone, right?
It's
the Dakotas. Is it North Dakota or is it South Dakota?
Talking about Standing Rock?
Yeah, Standing Rock. That's a Sacred Stone, isn't it?
Yeah,
maybe. I think so.
I'm sorry, I've forgotten. It's been a while.
It's all right.
But yeah, I was going to head up there, but I just never ended up being able to head up there. It's a bit difficult when you don't have a car, but
or money.
Or money. But yeah, it was, and I mean, there's a reason why they talk about unceded treaty lands and stuff like that. The United States has been making deals in bad faith for a very long time. The most recent one that basically made the world realize that we make deals in bad faith is the Iran deal, because it was an international treaty that involved a lot more people. But I mean, if it was just a deal between the United States and Iran, I'm not sure there would be the same sort of international backlash that there has been. Anyway.
Yeah. But I don't even remember where we were before the Native American piece in regards to the main topic, though.
It was about how jurisdiction and police forces and enforcing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's kind of, it's related, and I think it really just goes to show that there are places, even within the United States now, that don't really have any kind of police force at all. Not really. You know, I mean, sure, there might be feds on the reservation every now and then, but they don't really care about the minor crimes. You know, drug dealing, stuff like that. They're just going to be like, whatever. I got other stuff to do now. It's not my thing. I'm not with ATF. So I mean, it's
Badger secret agent.
Pretty much.
Whatever.
So anyway, then.
Yeah. So I mean, it's because I mean, like, we have problems with communities that are over-policed. But I think it's also important to remember that there are communities that are also lacking in police forces.
Yeah.
They have no protection from people from outside their community or even from within their community as well.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, we've also been talking a little bit about that, not even just in the Native American communities, but like largely urbanized communities as well, like especially African American communities. They don't get policed except for when the cops are coming in there and busting them up for drugs or something. You know, if
that was what I meant by over policed. But yes.
So
I'm just trying to say though, like there is also like under you know, policing in those areas too. There's over policing in some ways where they're just, you know, hassling everyone because of drugs and doing stop and frisk and all of that. But then there's also like, if one of these people in one of the communities there was saying, okay, I just saw someone shot on the street, it might take an hour for the cops to get there. They just sort of like mosey on by. You know, they don't really seem to care enough about those communities unless it's like, you know, drug stuff or drug related, where they can actually say, you see that? We took all these drugs off the street. And it's sort of like the cops are just, you know, I don't know. It's just, I don't know what to say.
Well, I had a question. So we spoke a lot about the how inadequate law enforcement seems to be in the U.S. and even in the UK. So, like, what do you have any suggestions on how to make it better?
A lot of it does fall down to accountability. Like, we need the police to be accountable. The police can't be immune to the law. They have to be accountable to the law in themselves.
You were having some weird noise in the back.
Yeah, we're getting a little feedback.
A little bit.
Oh,
a little bit.
Sorry. 1 sec.
That's good.
Having noise.
Yeah. I know we've talked around this in the past, and I'm going to go back to where I actually got suggestions from last time, because it still you know, makes sense to me. Campaign Zero. Go to their website. They're at www.joincampaignzero.org. This is the group, I guess, that's still tied with Black Lives Matter, a lot of it, and this was sort of like the action side of it, where they were trying to like push for legislation for police tactics and everything to be changed and improved.
Yeah, I mean, like, when I went through, like, I don't remember where it was, but it was labeled as, like, Black Lives Matter's suggestions for improving relations with police. You know, and I went through it, and I was just like, this sounds great. I'd love this.
It sounds
you know,
reasonable,
actually, like, engaging with community, being part of the community, you know, not being like a police force from without, but being a police force from within, and being accountable to the community.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, something that would drastically police forces all across the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, even now, like, if I were to say I got a car and I were to drive through a small town that's just a little bit south of where I live, if I went even 2 miles per hour over the speed limit, I'd get pulled over in a snap because I'm not from that town.
Yeah.
And they'll ignore people from the town going 5-10 miles per hour over. But if someone from out of town goes just a little bit over, they're pulled over immediately.
Yeah.
And of course, in Iowa, it's even easier to tell from when someone's from out of town because we have the county on our license plate.
Oh, wow.
So,
Damn.
yeah, like, you know, it's like, oh, they're from Jasper County. They're from Webster County. You know, it's like, it was always kind of interesting to like on a Saturday or Sunday to like go down to like the shopping mall, like Jordan Creek in West Des Moines, and just take a look at all the different counties. I bet you can probably find at least one license plate from all 99 counties in Iowa.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
But going back to the suggestions though, the Campaign Zero lays down, they have a 10 bullet points here basically. Number 1, end broken windows policing, which is basically like we need to stop having the cops focus on minor crimes that are like in that instance, broken windows. Like instead of a cop going and ticketing someone for a broken window, maybe have the cops actually doing something that's actually more important. You know, I don't know. But like just taking away like some of the things that they do, they even have more in here. Stop enforcement on consumption of alcohol on the streets. Stop enforcement on marijuana possession, disorderly conduct, trespassing, loitering, disturbing the peace, loud music, as an example, spitting, jaywalking, that kind of thing. Instead of the cops focusing on that and like cracking down on those people, maybe they should be, trying to solve crimes that happen, or something like that. Number 2 is community oversight, having the community actually have a board above the cops that can actually have a role in overseeing what the police force is actually doing and holding them accountable. Number 3, limit the use of force. They should not be able to be pulling their gun out every chance that they get. This is obvious, right? Like why should it be that when any situation comes out, the immediate thing is to pull out the service revolver or handgun and just start aiming it at people? That is just stupid. And even the military knows that that's not the right thing to do. Our military, since we've been over in Iraq and Afghanistan, they've realized they need to actually do more a de-escalation tactic. And you do not aim a weapon at someone unless you are going to use it, because just the act of aiming a gun at someone is just going to make the person being aimed at act more erratically. Because when you have like your life starts flashing in front of your eyes in that situation, and that makes people run, that makes people like attack, that makes people do all kinds of crazy shit. And it's not right for them to attack. It's not right for them to run. They shouldn't be running and all that. But when you have a loaded gun pointed at you, that's going to just change people's minds and they're just going to act. It's a fight or flight kind of situation there. You that kicks in. You can't, disaggregate that.
Yeah. And running actually seems like quite a reasonable response to being aimed at with a gun. When you kind of think about it, like you said, it's a fight or flight.
Fight or flight.
Fight or flight.
Thank you. Yeah, trust me, I know that theory, guys.
Yeah.
But
we're just trying to help you pronunciate it there.
Oh no, I'm not stupid. I swear.
No, I'm not saying you're stupid.
No, I know.
Maybe sometimes, but
no, I'm not saying. Chris was saying that. I was just sitting here going, "Really, Chris? What's wrong with you?"
Sometimes.
But you do see the videos of people running away, and you also see the videos of them not only running away but getting shot in the back too, and but yeah, it does kind of seem like a logical response when you feel like your life's on the line. I mean, should you act cordially and be very calm and just put your hands up if you kind of feel like, the possibility of you doing that could also end in death? It's...
Yeah, well, and it's... So I was robbed when I worked at a gas station on the overnight shift. And they told me they had a gun. They didn't actually show it to me, but they told me they had one. And I was panicking and shaking so hard. I legitimately wanted to just run out the back door and set off the fire alarm. But I was terrified that if I moved even just an inch, that I'd get shot immediately.
I would probably be crying like a little girl myself if that happened.
Yeah, I understand,
it's not easy.
the desire to just get the fuck out of there. Yeah. And I think it's always kind of a calculation of, can I actually make it? And I didn't think I could make it, so I didn't run.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, that's you just thinking that the gun might be there. Now, like, if the guy was pointing it at you, that would be even more insane, right? That would put the it would kick it up to 11, as some might say, in some regards.
Well, I mean, it's to the point where, like, I saw, because, we have concealed carry in Iowa. And I saw a guy who, I'm going to guess he probably had concealed carry, but it wasn't concealed. It was just on his belt, invisible, which actually is illegal. And he walked into a store that I was working at, and I just panicked. And I was like, we don't allow guns in here.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I'm an off-duty police officer. I have a permit.
That's great.
And I'm like,
don't want it here.
We don't allow guns in here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And to the point where I was just like, and then like when he was just being all belligerent, I'm like, okay, that's my manager over there. And I went and I told Jamie, and I was like, I'm taking a break. And I went into the back room where it was locked.
Yeah. Perfectly understandable in our country, dude. Yeah. Extremely understandable.
Yeah, I was just like, I've been robbed before. I've heard stories about other, because I was working at GameStop at the time. I've heard stories about other GameStops getting robbed at gunpoint multiple times in the same month.
Yeah. And it's not even like
in our district, you know? So, I mean, it was just like, I knew all the people who worked at that store. In fact, I had worked at that store, like, filling in shifts. I was just like, I don't want to be anywhere near a gun. Yeah. Ever.
And it's not even like an off-duty cop can't rob a place either. Like they can do that. I mean, anyone can. And that's the thing. You still don't know who this person is. They could still rob the place.
Hell, for fuck's sake, he could have been lying about that too. I don't know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's one of those things, and I think it's something that our gun culture has conditioned us to think that it's normal to want to carry a gun everywhere. And I don't think it is normal.
Yeah, no. It's normal in other countries, like, the Middle East, where there's people with AK-47s walking around, but they kind of need to in some of those places. That's why they do it, Whereas in this country, we've had it a little bit different, like we've had better laws on the books that, like, make our streets safer. And we've had police forces that can actually, like, handle a lot more than people you need to on a daily basis as just, like, a cost of running a town, But, I mean, I guess we should get back to the list here, though. There's a lot of good stuff here, and we've touched on a lot of this already, I think. This list, I think, is just really perfect. I don't know if there's much I can really add to it. But number 4, independently investigate and prosecute. That means if a cop does something, you have an independent investigation and an independent prosecution. Because what happens right now is who does the investigation but the cops? And who does the prosecution but the prosecutor that works with those cops day in and day out to lock away criminals? And so what happens is, when you're trying to prosecute and investigate something that a cop did, you have cops doing it and their friends doing it. And so, because the thing with the prosecutor is he has to work with them on a daily basis, so he has to have a good relationship with them. So if he actually comes down on a cop, that actually can make the rest of the cops say, well, we're not going to work with you anymore with any of your prosecutions. F off, and we're not going to talk to you anymore. And that ruins his job. And so it's in his best interest to help the cop. And so this is why we need independent investigations and prosecutions on these matters. And so number 5, community representation. So the cops themselves need to be from the communities that they're policing, because that in itself is a good thing. Back in the day, like, when my father, I had this one story from my father. He was a rowdy teen at one point. You know, he went racing around town at one point, and the cop actually knew who he was. And he actually met him at his home and was like, dude, don't do that again. You know? And like, it could have been worse if that cop had literally no idea who he was. He might have chased him down and it could have escalated into a really bad situation, right? Yeah. But the cop knew who he was. He knew where he lived. And like, when the cops are part of the community, they'll actually also be maybe lighter on these people for doing stupid shit, you know? Yeah. And in that regard with my father, he got off clean because, you know, he was part of the community. The cop was part of the community, and he was just like, don't do it again, you know? But, number 6, body cams, film the police. And we're seeing that catching on a lot more in a lot of places, but that's still not perfect in itself. You know, that's not the only thing. There's all these other things that also have to go on. It does help in some ways, and like there's a lot of different situations where that does come in handy. But yeah, did you want to add? Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I think it was perceived to be a watershed moment when it was, I guess, mandatory that police wore body cameras. And however, we learned to realize that that isn't enough to deter them from doing acts that are seen as, corrupted or,
part of that, yeah, part of that's because, you know, again, it goes back to that whole, they work with the prosecutors, they, you know, and all that, you know, it's kind of like it's an old boys club. And so as a result, you kind of get this sort of, it might be perfectly obvious that they did something wrong, but nobody's really willing to call them out on it. But then, like, if it's obvious enough and if there's enough public fear behind it, a lot of times they'll at least go through the sham of a like an indictment process. And then, of course, you know, they'll throw the indictment, or they'll sometimes, if it's really extreme, they'll let it go to trial. But yeah, a lot of times they'll kind of, there's been cases where, you know, like they'll try to like stalk the jury and stuff, or stack the jury, I think is what it's called. Yeah. You know, or they'll give like purposely unclear directions to the jury to try to, you know, throw the conviction. Yeah.
Or like, they'll say like specific things, unless specifically this, and this line up, then you should not, convict this person or something. You know, you shouldn't say guilty. And but
you know, they'll purposely weight the jury with people from pro-cop communities, like Staten Island. I think that was what happened with the officers charged in, was it Freddie Gray's murder in New York City for selling loose cigarettes? Or did they even go to trial?
Freddie Gray, I believe, was I think that was wasn't it Baltimore actually? And
was that Baltimore?
Eric Garner, I think, is actually who you're talking about. Yeah.
My goodness, there's been too many deaths.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, goes back to that song, "This Is America." You know, there's just so much going on, and we don't even have enough focus to focus on anything for long. It's insane. But in regards to body cams, though, I just found a video earlier. You just linked something earlier, Jordan, about this child named Damon Grimes, and he was a 15-year-old boy who was murdered by the police. I'm not going to say anything other than that. He was murdered by the police. I found a video on YouTube about it. It was actually footage, I guess, like almost like CCTV footage in some ways, and then others were parts of the aftermath was police body cams. And there was a point when all of the police officers turned their cameras off, and one officer turned hers on, And I don't know if that's that she did it purposely to turn it off, or maybe she thought it was already on and she turned it on thinking she was turning it off. But after that point, after they all had turned their body cams on, that was then when they started like asking each other what the hell happened. And one of the cops told her that what happened was kid was riding a four-wheeler down a street, and a cop was trying to pull him over and to stop him. Kid wasn't stopping, so the police officer came up right beside him. They were driving down the street side by side, and the police officer pulled out a taser and tased the kid while they were moving.
Oh my God.
Moving fast down the road, and tased the kid while he was riding on this four-wheeler.
Yeah, no, that's murder.
And he lost control and hit the back of a 4x or a big truck or something like that, and had a massive hit to the head, and he was pronounced dead by the time he got to the actual hospital. He was dead on arrival when he got to the hospital, and it's just like that right there. The cops, they can actually edit what you see out of those cameras sometimes. They turned them off, and that's when they started talking about what actually happened. And they all thought the cameras were off. And so they should not have that kind of power to turn those cameras on and off whenever the hell they want, because that's what happens. They then go into what actually happened when they think the cameras are off of them. Now they can talk freely. And it's just absurd, and the video is pretty messed up. It's really hard to see what happens, but you can definitely see the kid on the thing sort of like swerves off a little bit and then just stops, and you see the aftermath of what had happened a little bit. But god damn, man, it's frustrating to see, and I don't know if there's going to be anyone held accountable. I know the one officer that was accused of it is facing charges, and I think he was even fired from the police force as well.
He was actually fired.
Yeah.
Did the firing stick, or did the union bring him back?
I'm not sure yet. I don't know how far along these things are yet, but
because the police union does that.
But anyway, these things are important. But let's get back to more of the things here. There's 10 altogether. We're on number 7 here is training. Let's train these cops better, because I've actually heard that police officers can get like 30 hours of weapons training. So if they get 30 hours of training just on how to use their gun. And how many hours do you think that they get for de-escalation training?
Well, mind you,
8. From what I remember hearing, it was 8 in some places. They got 8 hours of de-escalation training and 30 hours of gun training. And that's it.
Yeah.
Training needs to change.
And so I was actually, for one thing, training varies widely across the United States. Every state has its own requirements. And of course, some police forces have more stringent requirements than others. I was talking to one police officer who he decided to become a cop in the 1990s. He was originally a programmer, and then the .com bubble burst, and he decided to get a job as a police officer. And he's much happier now. He works overnights because he doesn't want to do the politics. Anyway, but he was telling me about basically, so when he went through training, tasers weren't really a thing. So the only weapon that they were trained, like projectile weapon, was their gun. And as a result, you were taught, do not fire unless absolutely necessary. You have your nightstick. You can use your nightstick to disable people, So he was telling a story about how he and another cop were basically chasing a girl who was kind of just running away from them. And he almost had her. He was like real close to tackling her. And then his partner actually shouted behind him, "Taser, taser, you're going to get tased." And then she just stopped and dropped to the ground. And so he just kind of went flying, and he was kind of pissed about that. But the thing is, because for the other cop, he went through training when tasers were part of the training regimen. So for him, it's a go-to. It's an automatic. And of course, they're taught they're non-lethal weapons. You can use them very easily and very safely, for the most part. And so it's something they just naturally go for. And, they're on opposite sides of the belt from their guns. But, because they're taught that same sort of attitude towards the taser, I could see a lot of people thinking, I'll just shoot the guy.
Yeah.
Especially if they don't really actually care that much. That's part of the training there and the tools that have actually made it so that your non-lethal options are actually still kind of similar to your lethal options. Although he did tell me about how there's one resident who, when he was really hyped up on drugs, essentially they couldn't use a taser on him to subdue him because basically he wouldn't feel it. And in order to actually bring him down, they would have to shock him so much his heart would stop because of the drugs that he was on. So things like that. So tasers can be very dangerous in many situations, and they are completely ineffective. And in those cases, he said, we just have to basically just dogpile him until he and wait for him to calm down. So, there's different situations. And I think as a result, because of modern technology, there is sort of a reflex to go for weapons which are very close to lethal. And so a lot of cops, because the taser actually feels a bit more similar to the gun, a lot of them might just go for the gun. It kind of blurs a little bit of that line. You don't have to be up close and personal with someone to subdue them anymore. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, so definitely training needs to be a way that things change. So getting back to the list, there's three more here. We are running a little low on time though, guys. But number 8, end for-profit policing. And let's look into that one real quick, just to get a gist of what they're talking about. People should be working to keep people, police should be working to keep people safe, not contributing to a system that profits from stopping, searching, ticketing, arresting, and incarcerating people. And that's their whole statement on it. And then they say, end police department quotas for tickets and arrests as one of those things, limit fines and fees for low-income people, prevent police from taking the money or property of innocent people. That's a asset forfeiture thing, the civil asset forfeiture thing that happens. And that's really messed up. It's like, cops can, in some instances, just take money from you if they deem the money guilty, which is ridiculous, right? But, it does happen at times where, there have been stories where someone's going across country, they're moving across country, and so they take their money with them, on them, because they couldn't transfer it from one bank to another. And so they took the cash and cashed it, had it with them. They drove across the country, got stopped by the police. The police find the money and they take the money and say, civil asset forfeiture, this money was guilty. Man, it just really isn't our night right now. My power just went out again, and everyone else has dropped from the call by now. I'm sorry about this, guys. The weather just didn't want us to do this show today. I figured I would come back in here and try and finish up the topic if I can. There were a few more bullet points to get to, and my internet is completely not working right now. But the last two were demilitarization of the police, and then fair police union contracts. So the police should not be getting military-grade weaponry or vehicles like they have been getting, because that just leads to a more militarized police force, right? And why do police officers need ARs, assault rifles? Why do they need bomb-proof, gigantic Humvees and tanks? Why do they need those? I don't think they need them. You know, maybe in some instances they come against like riots or something like that, but like that's like the most extreme situation, I think. Even like if you're going against like something small, it doesn't seem like an active shooter or something. I don't see why you would need a tank to take down an active shooter or something, you know? And so there's got to be bounds of reasons. When you militarize the police like that, it makes them want, like, the cops themselves in some ways think like they're like Rambo or something like that, or I guess, I don't know. Because sometimes these cops get much more belligerent and drunk with their own power when they have this gear on. And so we should demilitarize the police. They shouldn't be having these fancy things. It's great if you want to go to a shooting range and play with them. Go for it. But they should not need these weapons to do their job. They don't need them to do their job. And the fair police union contracts is another way to, I guess, get the police to, I guess I'll read from the thing here. Actually, the internet just came back up. Police unions have used their influence to establish unfair protections for police officers in their contracts with local, state, and federal government, and in statewide law enforcement officers' bills of rights. These provisions create one set of rules for police and another for civilians, and make it difficult for police chiefs or civilian oversight structures to punish police officers who are unfit to serve. Learn more about how police union contracts help officers avoid accountability here, and they have a link there. And I suggest any of you guys out there that want to learn more about what they are proposing here, definitely go to their website at joincampaignzero.org. They've got it really a beautiful website there. They've got it laid out really, really nice and point by point, and they've got everything broken down of what they want done. And I agree with all of it, honestly, at this point. But with that, guys, my internet has gone out like 4 or 5 times now during the recording of this show. Unfortunately, the rest of them are gone now. I'm only recording this on my own outside of the internet now. The internet is completely dead again, and I'm just going to finish this up, guys. You guys have a great week, and we'll definitely talk to you next week, and we are still on the fence of what our next topic is going to be about. You guys, again, have a great week.